Familia, everybody watching, welcome to LBAN Live. And we come to you today on the most critical day because the Paycheck Protection Program, the PPP, is officially live today. And so we welcome you from coast to coast because it's a difficult time for small businesses across the United States and Puerto Rico. And LBAN stands ready to assist in terms of real-time information that can help you navigate through all the complexity, the confusion that we experienced last time. So with that said, we have some incredible guests that have a huge passion for Latino and Latina business owners, and that is Neil Harris. Welcome, Neil, President at Global Vision Communications. He's our in-resident expert. He's been with us. He's trending on Forbes on this topic. And we also have Eric Donnelly. He is CEO of Capital Plus Financial, a CDFI. He's with us today because he is actual capital provider that is live and accepting applications today. And of course, we have our extension of our familia, our team, our board of directors, and welcome. So we're going to start right now because it's not about being talking heads, it's about being people of action. So let's get to the topic right now. Neil, can you give us an update from where you sit on what's happening today and why it's important to get ahead?
Sure. Well, thank you, Mark. Always great to be with you and the LBAN family here. So let's just get right into it. When Mark says the PPP program is live now, that means that your lender should be ready to take your applications to apply for the Paycheck Protection Program loan, either as a first-time borrower or if you're eligible for a second-time PPP, and I'll get into the requirements for that. So again, in my case, my bank sent out an email saying they have an online portal you can log into, and also there's an SBA form. It's a one-page form that you can also use and then submit that to your lender. So now's the time to do it. The program, you have up until March 31st, 2021 to apply, but I have a sense, and this is just a gut reaction, that this money is going to go very quickly, kind of like we saw with the first tranche of money almost a year ago today. Hard to believe it's almost been a year. So I'd start looking into that right away. So what the deal is this: if you did not apply for a loan last year or in the first rounds, you can apply now, and that's just a pretty straightforward deal. You have to have 500 or fewer employees, and the maximum loan amount is $2 million, which is down from what it used to be, but it's still $2 million. If you did receive a loan in the first round, a PPP loan, you have to show that you had a reduction in revenue in one quarter of 2020 over the same quarter in 2019. So you're going to have to document that through a P&L statement or tax returns to show that you had that reduction in revenue. If you are only borrowing $150,000 or less, you actually don't have to show that reduction when you're applying for this one, but you do have to show it later when you're applying for forgiveness. So just something to keep in mind. They're trying to streamline the process right now. For borrowers getting over $150,000, you are going to have to show that reduction in revenue now on the front end when you apply for the loan. So good to keep that in mind. The way you calculate the loan is the same as you did last time, or we did last time, for most companies, which is you take 1 month of payroll from 2019. You can also now do it in 2020, that 1 month of your payroll, and you multiply it times 2.5, which basically amounts to 10 weeks of what you would be paying your employees. They did carve a special caveat for restaurants and hotels, those industries, with the SIC code of 72, where you can multiply your payroll times 3.5%. So you can get a little bit more money if you're in those industries, which were were really hard hit. Once you get the money, it's the same standard as it was before for the most part, which is 60% of the loan has to go towards your payroll. That's still the intent of the legislation, and what the government wants us to do is to keep people on the payroll for the next 8 to 10 weeks. The other 40% you can use on expenses, and they've expanded that, which is good. The first round, you could only use it on utilities or rent, mortgage payments, or interest on loans that you already had. And that was very limiting for all of us as business owners, right? So now they expanded that to cover things like, personal protective equipment that you have to buy for your employees, operational expenses, especially software, cloud computing, and also accounting software, which we're all now should be using to calculate all this. So you can now include that along with expenses from your essential suppliers. So any supplies you're getting that are critical to your business, you can account that. Same thing, you track this money being spent over a 24-week period. So however long it takes you to spend that money, you have up to 24 weeks, which should be plenty of time to spend the money. Track it very carefully. Keep it in a separate bank account if you can, and track the money, and then you can apply for forgiveness. They did also expand eligibility here to a few groups that weren't in the first PPP program, which includes 501c6s, which is like a chamber of commerce. So if there's any chamber of commerce folks on this meeting, you are now eligible. Local media outlets, which were excluded, and also other 501c3s, religious organizations, are now also eligible to apply for the loans. Interestingly, they also carved out a special grant program. It's separate from PPP, but I want to mention it because, again, it's in the entertainment sector, which some of you might be in. Live performance, that means museums are covered, zoos, and any venue that basically features live entertainment. We're not talking about like a coffee shop that has a guitar player. You have to be in the business of live performances. And then you have a $15 billion grant program that you can apply for. And those are not loans. That's a pure grant. You don't have to pay it back. I will add, and I know we're going to get to this in a second, they have tried to really carve out money for smaller businesses and those in economically disadvantaged areas. So there's $25 billion that are going to be coming through CDFIs, and we're going to get into that in a second. Also, minority lenders, and those are in economically disadvantaged areas. So that money, and I believe they're going to prioritize those applications now. So they're going to look at those first, and then they'll get into the rest of the applications. So I think, you know what, Mark, I'm going to stop there because I think I know we want to talk about more of that CDFI lending, and then we can get into Q&A. I'm sure there's lots of questions, but that's the high-level view of what we're looking at today.
Thank you, Neil. Very much appreciated. And Familia, what we're trying to do here is we're trying to get you ahead of the game. And the name of this series, to be honest with you, is What You Need to Know Right Now. We don't want you to get to Saturday and feel like you have this void in your system here and saying, I should have done something back on Monday. And that might lead to 2 weeks and 3 weeks and 4 weeks. The bottom line is the first in, the first out. It's like the accounting principle. Plus, as Latino and Latina business owners, you have a chance because there's an investment this time in this emergency relief bill to prioritize you. And so with that said, we're going to hear now from Eric Donnelly, CEO of Capital Plus Financial, who is the CDFI. And selfishly, he's also an alumni of the Stanford Latino Scaling Program. But Eric, can you tell us more about what the opportunities are with applying through a CDFI, what that timing looks like, and to reiterate Neil's point about the focus on minority-owned businesses this time around?
Sure. Thanks, Mark. And that was great, Neil. And, what I would add is that the regulators and Treasury and the SBA have been very intentional about carving out this kind of relief for the most vulnerable part of the country, which inherently are the ones that CDFIs tend to support, both low to moderate income communities and underserved minority groups. And so what we have seen is even down to, I was on an interagency call earlier, even down to the call center the big banks have been encouraged not to call in until later in the week to allow CDFIs and community financial institutions to get the help that they need to set up their portals, to take care of their borrowers, to answer questions. And so the first today and tomorrow really geared around what Neil aptly described as the first draw of the PPP for those who didn't receive it the first go around. They will be for the second draw, and then it will open up later in the week to banks. And so we have tried to meet this occasion. I know that rules coming out on Friday night and being ready on Monday morning for a lot is daunting. We made the decision to be sorry, I thought I heard an echo. To be open and ready to go, to put people in the queue for Wednesday who are, most of the people that we're seeing so far have been second draw applicants, but we want to be able to get the word out that those that didn't receive it the first time around take advantage of this window for CDFIs and minority depository institutions for the set aside for the intentional direction that the regulators have given here to make sure that our communities, certainly of color and underserved, are addressed first. So we're here to be a resource. We're certainly here to process any PPP loans, but the overriding message is I think there's a coordinated effort with Treasury, with banks, with community financial institutions to get relief out as quickly as possible. And I think the overriding message earlier in the day on the call was a little bit different than this point that Neil made, was that there will be money available. And we don't want people to think that there will not be. My sense is if it starts to see that that money is running out, it will quickly be replenished, because there is an intentional effort to provide relief to these businesses that have been severely affected because of COVID. So I'm happy. I think, Mark, to your point earlier, it's certainly fruitful to answer questions, and so happy to get into that.
Well, thank you, Eric. That was very beneficial. And so we invite you to post your questions here, your engagement. I already have some questions for you. Eric, could you just reiterate, if you're in a situation where you're doing a second draw, meaning you already received PPP financing, what can or can't you do today, and with whom?
So today you can get into various lender portals. You can start doing the work. The underwriter is working with you on the paperwork so that you can hit the ground running on Wednesday when those lenders are able to start submitting second draws.
Got it. Okay, wonderful. And this
so don't wait until Wednesday to have your questions. Do them now.
That's the bottom line. That is the bottom line right here. What Neil is attesting to, what Eric is attesting to, start now. If you're eligible, start now. Right. And it's also a key point. Am I eligible? So I would like for Neil and just about a minute or minute and a half, let's make sure that we understand who is eligible for a first draw and a second draw.
Sure. Well, so for first draw, it is you have to have 500 or fewer employees. So if you're over 500 employees, you can't apply. And the loan is capped at $2 million. So even if your payroll calculation is beyond 2 million, you have to take the 2 million. So it's the lesser of the two. So that's pretty straightforward. The second tranche, the people who are coming in for the second PPP, is a little bit more complicated. First of all, they've lowered the employee count. They're trying to focus on smaller businesses. So it's 300 or fewer employees. The loan is still capped at 2 million, but it's 300, not 500. And the real difference is you have to show the reduction in revenue. That's really the big point there. If you are applying for $150,000 or less, and you're going through the same lender that you did the first time, and this is really important, you're going back to the same lender. It's a really straightforward form. I've looked at it. You basically just attest. You just say, I have less than 25% of the revenue that I did. And it's quarter by quarter, right? So you can look at Q2, Q3, Q4 of 2020 and say it's 25% less than the quarter in 2019. They're not going to ask for the documentation up front. They will ask for it when you go later to apply for the forgiveness. If you want complete forgiveness, then you have to show that through a P&L mostly, or some your quarterly tax returns or yearly tax returns are acceptable as well. If you're borrowing more than that, okay, between 150 and 2 million, you have to show the 25% reduction now when you're applying. So if you're in that category, got to get that together, get the paperwork and the book sorted out, because you need that to apply now on the front end for the loan.
Mark, let me follow up really quickly on what Neil said, because I think it's very important. One is, the common question now is, I got killed in the second quarter, but I did great in Q3 and Q4. Am I able? Answer is yes. Secondly, I think it's important, even if it's under the 150, to expect the lenders, because forgiveness is such a big deal, to ask for information, even though it's not required. I think it's just good practice for those that are seeking the application on round 2 to have some kind of documentation in order. And that could be as simple as a QuickBooks report. I just think it's the responsible thing to do, both for the borrowers and expect it to come from the lenders as well.
Great follow-up on that point. We have a couple of questions. Zudi, welcome, Zudi. And she has a question about, what if a company still has not applied for forgiveness on the first draw? Can I apply right now for the second draw?
Good question. The answer is yes.
Wonderful. We have a question for
yes, sir. Quick caveat on that. The answer is yes, but you have to have spent all the money already. Your first PPP has to be already spent or will be spent by the time the next loan is dispersed. So if you're still sitting on a bunch of PPP money from round 1, that'll cause a little bit of a hiccup. But
thank you for raising that. So you will have to have gone through your first PPP funding in order by the disbursement date projected.
Yeah, either now it all has to be gone, or by the time you receive the next loan, the disbursement date, you need to project that the PPP funds will be gone. As I said, they all should be gone. I mean, the last PPP closed in August, so you should have spent that money by now.
And part of that functionality comes down to documentation, right, and recording. Yeah. So we can't reinforce enough about fortifying yourself with a documentation support, legal support, finance and accounting support, because family, we're also taking care of a projection down the road with where things are going with the next administration. This is just the emergency relief that came about in this in-between period. So you're also setting yourself up for more support down the road potentially. We had a question from Jonathan. Jonathan, welcome. And Jonathan's question is, can a company get a PPP loan and use it for a solar energy system? And a second question, any special perks for veterans?
I'll take the first crack at that. The first part, the solar energy system, I mean, I wouldn't think so. It doesn't really fall into one of the categories, I think, that they've laid out, which again is, your rent, your mortgage, your utilities. I guess I don't know if it was part of your utility, maybe you could probably make that argument. Interest on loans, personal protective equipment, operations, potentially. They haven't really delved into this, but if it's something
there's a piece for damages from damages to your business, right? Like if somebody broke in, that's eligible use of proceeds, right?
Yeah.
But I'm sort of with you. I don't think that the energy system falls into that.
Likely not. And in terms of the veterans, yes, veterans are also being prioritized with that, carved out of that $25 billion. You're a veteran-owned business. They do want to prioritize you to get funding first.
Excellent. Zudi, definitely the PPP will be forgiven the second time as well. So that practice that you had the first time around, coming back to that documentation, that organization, you're going to need that the second time around. And we do have an update on forgiveness from the holidays. We saw you between Christmas and the New Year's, and we said we had an update that the forgiveness process had been simplified for loan amounts 50,000 or less, but we had an update that threshold had gone up to 150,000 or less. Can you both reiterate what that process is and what a big deal that was, frankly?
Sure.
Well, it was huge. Yeah. Go ahead, Neil. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Oh, no. Well, yeah, I'll take the first crack at that. Yeah. So basically, the issue around the loans at the front end was that they just asked you to certify that you didn't have money elsewhere, the liquidity test they called it, right? That you didn't have money that you could tap elsewhere, and also that the economic uncertainty led us all to apply for the first PPP. In my opinion, all borrowers, regardless of the circumstance, and even the ones over 2 million who have more to deal with than those under, in March of 2020, no one knew what was going to happen. And I think we'd all say it was probably worse than we thought. Even if you did well, many businesses did well, I applaud you, but still, we're still in economic uncertainty. So what this is saying now is if you borrowed up to 150,000 and you're applying for forgiveness, it's going to be the same thing. You basically get to certify, check the box that, I didn't have credit elsewhere and I was economically uncertain, and that's why I needed the loan, and that's going to be it. They're not going to ask you more. I will put the caveat for those borrowers over 2 million. They floated some forms, some disclosure that banks could ask for, the SBA will ask for, about a much more detailed financial picture in March of 2020 than those of us who didn't have over 2 million. That is in litigation right now, by the way. So stand by for that. So the borrowers over 2 million, a lot's going to change there. But that's where it is with the 150,000 or less, Mark.
Thank you. And Daryl.
Mark, also just to jump on that, there's also a desire on the part of SBA to preach a little bit of patience on the front end of the second draw. It's going to be a little bit different upload process from the lenders and a little bit more of documentation really meant to make forgiveness more streamlined down the road. So this is a little bit off tangent from what Neil was saying, but something that we didn't cover earlier, which is to exhibit a little bit of patience on that businesses are struggling. But as we go through this process, it may be a little bit longer to get the money than it was on the front end, just because of added complexities of the upload. But it's meant to make the forgiveness piece a little bit more streamlined, so it'll be worth it.
Absolutely. And that's another point, is things are going to change. That is the bottom line. We learned that the first time. We're going to learn that the second time, and the third time, hopefully. We're going to push for that. You can rest assured that LBAN will be on the front lines. And so you need to know where you can go for this information. So we submit for your consideration that you come here to LBAN along with your other sources. We'll keep you updated. So just as a reiteration, Yaeli, thank you so much for joining us. So familia, yes, if you had a bad quarter compared to the prior quarter in the previous year, meaning 2020 versus 2019, you are eligible for this program, even if you pick things up in the third and fourth quarter. So that is an absolute yes. You're just gonna have to be prepared to document and verify that. Very good technical question from Robert. Thank you for joining us, Robert. Eric, take this one. We opened a bank account to manage our PPP expenditures in the first round. Should we open a new account if we get a second loan or open a new account to keep expenditures separated?
It's certainly the more conservative way to. I would recommend it. I know it's a little bit of a pain to manage multiple accounts, but I think it's the wise thing to do. It certainly is going to help the lenders in documenting the expenses. So I would say yes.
Got it. Got it. We have a question from Arturo, Neil, on how's it going to, how's the max funding amount going to be calculated?
Sure. Well, again, like the first round, it's 2.5 times 1 month of payroll. So you can look at either 2020 or 2019. You take 1 month of that, of whatever your payroll is, and you multiply that times 2.5. If you're in the restaurant or hospitality business, they're allowing you to multiply it times 3.5. Kind of a better a bonus for that industry, which was really hard hit. But the maximum loan amount is $2 million. So regardless, if that multiplication is greater than 2 million, you're capped at $2 million. But that's how you're calculating it.
Wonderful. Thank you. Any questions here that I'm trying to pick up that you all see? Along the same lines, do we use the same information for payroll? Is a question from Rafael Hernandez.
Yes.
I think that's from the first time around and
Yeah.
using it. Perfect. Yes. So it's status quo on that one, Rafael. Can it be in any month? Is the follow-up question from Naya.
Yes.
Okay, good technical question. So familia, you see the SBA link that I provided, but the whole goal here was to bring this document to life. Because when you go into the SBA, and they need to have this, right? You'll see documents for a first draw, a second draw, the new guidelines, etc. But we're just trying to get you some fuel to get started here. But you can always go to that website for all the forms required for the regulations and guidelines that they've been administered. And by the way, we will be here for you. And also not only for the CDFIs, for the national banks, for the community banks, as they roll out this information to get you capital. That's the bottom line. Now, we are thrilled to have Eric here on LBAN Live as a CDFI, where their portal is open today. It's live and going. And Neil here providing some backdrop, as he is a trendsetter when it comes to information about PPP on Forbes. So we're just coming with best practices of what we learned the first time, this time around. So we have some more questions here. Everybody wants to know this question. Maria Palacio, if you apply today, when can we expect the money?
I'll leave that to Eric.
Wow. Perfect.
Show me the money.
You show me the money.
Yeah.
Wow. I mean, based on the first round of PPP, somewhere between 5 to 7 business days after you make application. And that 5 to 7 business days would include some back and forth with underwriters shoring up the file. But from the time that the loan is complete to when it's uploaded to the SBA system, I would give it somewhere between 2 and 3 business days. Mark, you're frozen on my end. Neil, frozen for you too?
Yeah. Well, while he's frozen, let me just, I'll throw in a couple other data points that I didn't get to earlier that are important. There are a couple of changes to the forgiveness and the some of the tax consequences. One of the biggest problems with the first round, Eric, you probably heard a lot about this, is the PPP was not considered income. So when it went from a loan to a grant, it wasn't considered income. You didn't have to put that on your tax return as income, but they didn't allow you to deduct those expenses that you paid for with PPP. They did tax. They said you can't deduct that. So in essence, they were taxing you on this money, which is kind of ridiculous in my humble opinion.
Agreed.
So they fixed that one, and that's real big for you all. If you're probably looking to file your taxes now, or you're looking at your 2020 tax bill, if you got that PPP, you now can take those deductions. I know a lot of businesses were kind of waiting to deal with that issue, and so that has been resolved, which I think is really, really important. I don't know, Eric, if you have anything to add on that one. But
no, I agree with that. The other thing that was occurring to me was the idle component to the
Yeah.
PPP amount, right?
Yeah.
Hey, and this is Elian Savadikar, one of the directors here at LBAN. While we're waiting for Mark to get back, I want to cover some of the questions that we're seeing in the chat. One of the things that I see here is, if you have an LLC but no payroll, can I still get the PPP funds? I have filed taxes the past 2 years and business was open and has been operating since 2018. And we also see somebody else that posted a similar question.
Well, when you say you have no payroll,
I mean, these loan amounts are in a payroll. Yeah.
What was that, Eric?
Sorry.
Oh, I was just going to say. I mean,
I was going
sure
to say these loan amounts are functions of payroll.
Right. I guess I was just, I'm not clear if this person means they don't run a payroll through a provider. They just write checks to themselves. If you some LLCs, right, you just take a draw every month. You might just, you're not running it through a payroll. I'll take a draw of $5,000. I'll pay taxes on it later. If that's what you're talking about, then yes, you can still calculate the 2.5 times whatever that draw is on a monthly basis. But if you're saying this is an entity that is not paying anybody any money for whatever reason that might be, then your calculation will be zero, right? It'll be 0 times 2.5, which is 0. But again, if you're just taking a draw, then that you can still calculate the payroll.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, and I guess that sort of question covers if you maybe do consultants or if you're paying people off, just not as regular employees. That's great. Another question that I see here, and I'm going to ask it and see if either of you can cover it, but Jose Sanchez said, please share how much the delta is from 1 quarter last year to 1 quarter this year. What's the percentage decrease to qualify a second time?
25%.
25%. Perfect. All right. And again, for those of you, and this one we put up, Jose Flores asked about the specific payroll records because most of our revenue and business was done via an outsourcing model to a staffing partner. Can you still qualify? So this touches base back on that LLC structure, but I don't know if you want to add any more information to this question.
Well, to the extent I understand it, again, I'm not sure if he means that he's an ADP or some kind of payroll provider is writing the checks or depositing the money. If that's the case, then yes, it's fine. If it's more of a, you have a subsidiary to a second company, you're a holding company, then it gets a little bit more complicated. So I'm not quite sure what the outsourcing model is. If you have contractors, if you have independent contractors, that's, that as opposed to full-time employees, that would be, you can't count that as your payroll because those independent contractors are eligible to get PPP themselves.
Right. And in this question, I think one of the things that they were referring to was if you're paying a staffing agency, but that would be probably similar to some of the things that you touched based on, right?
Yeah, so those wouldn't be full-time employees, and that's
right.
not going to be an eligible factor in the loan.
Candace asked, "What about ownership compensation replacement?"
I'm not totally following that.
Okay, so Candace, if you wanna go a little bit more in detail about what your question is, and then we can definitely cover that. And I see Mark is back, and so I'll pass it on to him.
Thank you, Elian. Okay, Sebastian. My LLCs are ones that own real estate. There are owner draws, but those have been hit due to tenants unwilling to pay rent.
Well, I have to take that because he was my mentee.
Good. Thank you.
Relationships matter, Neil. And
They do matter. And I know he's probably going to call me after this if I give him the wrong answer. In all seriousness, it circles back to what we've been covering the last few questions. It's a function of payroll. And so, yes, to your owner draw, right? I mean, that's going to be a component of payroll. But my guess is, Sebastian, that's just you and not so. I'll help you calculate that offline. How about that?
Perfect. So we got that inside connect there in the most ethical way. So there you go. Regina Monroe has a question. What if we took a pay cut because of COVID? Employees took reduced hours.
Well, I think that's why you're going to want to dip back to the payroll period. The payroll period is extensive, and so I wouldn't focus. On you'd want to go back to the payroll amounts pre your pay cut to get the maximum.
So the bottom line, Familia, is there is discretion on the payroll that you're using as the benchmark. So take a look at that. That's in the guidelines, but that's an excellent question because these things could be buried in the guidelines.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, they want you to do that. They want you to calculate it pre-COVID, so you get the maximum amount. But the caveat is they do want you to kind of, like if you let somebody go because of COVID, who was on the payroll, the point is they would like you to bring that person back or the equivalent type of employee. That does factor into fairness. You can get all the money from payroll from 2019 and then you would have like cut all your staff and just use that money somewhere else. You're not going to get the forgiveness that you want. I mean, you can still keep it as a loan, but remember, 60% has to be used on payroll and 40% eligible expenses. So just keep that in mind.
And there's a follow-up question on that. How far back could you go in terms of which payroll you select for the calculation purpose?
Anything in 2019 is eligible.
So there you go, Naya. Great question there. Rafael has a question. On first round, we select a month to calculate payroll of about 92K. And from that month, we did the calculations. The bank told us specifically a lower from January 2020. Is there any reason why, or just they want to select a lower? Can I decide which one? I think it goes back to what we've been saying, right?
Yeah, that's right. I don't know why that bank told you that, but the guidelines would tell you to take the higher one.
Got it. So Rafael, I think it bears repeating that you should have discretion there. And so I would be curious on why that situation resulted in that answer. Another key here is the more direct you can have a relationship with your banker or your CDFI, the better it is, right? Because you can have these questions addressed. And so we can't underscore the importance of having this relationship. Recall, everyone, that based on research from the Stanford Latino Entrepreneurship Initiative, thank you, Inara and Marlene, for that powerful research, but Latinos were approved at half the rate as whites on PPP, first draw. Now, there was a notable exception, and you're going to see that in a Forbes article that was led by Neil and co-authored by myself today. There was one huge exception, and that is alumni of the Stanford Latino Scaling Program. 82% that were interested in secure PPP financing. So it was all about this type of networking, these questions coming out in these forums, us being a resource and answering real time what's happening. For whatever reason, if we don't know the answer, but these two have, that's why they're here, is we would get back to you. And you can help us because it's not only about this group here right now, but you can help us with sharing this recording, sharing this valuable 40 minutes that is going to save hours, maybe weeks of time for others that have been in predicaments in the past. So we ask you to help us spread this message today, because we can read an email all day long, but what is it that we need to know about So we're bringing a live voices to this in addition to the support that you'll get from going to a website. So let's see here. There's some gratitude. Thank you. Ray has a question. Why is there an 8-week and 24-week allowance? What is the advantage? The obvious is more time to spend the money, but I'm not sure if there are other advantages.
Well, yeah. So, I mean, I think when they originally launched the program, it was just an 8-week period, and I think that they realized that might be too short, or not just too short, but there were some businesses, they were closed, and they were saying, well, my restaurant was closed. How was I supposed to use this money on payroll when the government shut my business down? I didn't have a choice, and so that didn't make a lot of sense for a lot of businesses. It was a big deal. So they spread it out over 24 weeks to address that issue, to give you the opportunity to, reopen your business. And, some are being closed down again now. So it really is up to you. They want to make sure that you can use all the funding, that you will get 100% forgiveness. By the way, neither the government nor your lender wants this to become a loan. They want it to be 100% forgiven. Nobody wants to carry these 1% loans on their balance sheet. So the point is, you have 24 weeks to use all the money appropriately. It's really kind of up to you. And then, of course, as soon as you do use it, you can apply for forgiveness. So you might get that, decision sooner. But that's the origin of why it went from 8 to 24.
Great response there. And so, Familia, as a reiteration, if you're getting a second draw, meaning you've already received PPP the first time around, if you're wanting to find eligibility for that second draw, it's a 25% reduction, a quarter-to-quarter comparison from 2020 to 2019. So in other words, in any specific quarter, meaning second quarter 2019 versus second quarter 2020, if you deteriorated by 25% or more, you can use that as eligibility requirement to get a second draw. Could be the same with third quarter to third quarter, fourth quarter to fourth quarter, or first quarter to first quarter. You could have had a terrible first quarter in 2020 and had a fabulous third quarter, and you would still qualify if you meet that requirement. Now, if you're coming around for the first time, you don't have that particular threshold to meet. So very good questions there. Roberto has a question regarding the 25% gross receipts reduction. If we received from clients less than 25% in monies in a quarter of 2020 compared to 2019, but we actually bill for more in all quarters of 2020 compared to 2019, do we still meet this requirement? We do our tax returns on the cash basis accounting.
So again, it's quarter over quarter. Whether or not the year ended significantly better than it started, or that quarter over quarter comparison, you can still apply.
Okay, Jose, good question. Versus calendar and fiscal year, are 3 months or specific calendar quarters?
Specific quarters. That's actually an interesting question. It depends on your fiscal year filing date. And so that may not always coincide with calendar quarters. So it's fiscal quarter over fiscal quarter. Excellent question,
Jose. All right. Well, listen, we don't want to be one of those organizations that keeps you around for longer than an hour. What we ask is that we're going to keep you under an hour. But obviously, there's a lot to digest here. And so I would love for Neil and Eric to have some closing remarks before I end up the segment. But let me tell you, Neil and Eric, for you on this particular day when you're doing so much and you get a text from me, can we do this in basically coming up very, very soon? Can you come on board and be with us? You answered the call like you always do. And that means a lot to LBAN and Stanford Latino Entrepreneurship Initiative, but most importantly, it means so much to these Latino and Latina entrepreneurs who are trying to run their businesses, and all small businesses, frankly, who are mom and pop, who are trying to figure things out, minority-owned businesses, women-owned businesses. We serve as our specialty Latino and Latina business owners, but this question applies to those who are running their businesses, don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. You're running a school district at home. You're dealing with what's happening with the folks in our family who are afflicted by COVID. You're not knowing what's going to happen next with the environment that we're living in. So the position that we're going to take here is, what do you need to know right now? What applies to you? What are the things that you can control? And the things we can't, we're just going to have to address those later, to be honest with you, and keep you updated. But with that said, huge gratitude to Neil and Eric. Neil, some parting words from you, and then we'll go on to Eric, and then I'll wrap this session up. Thank you.
Sure. Well, Mark, thanks again. Always great to be with you and your the LBAN community. It's been great to be a part of it. Eric, always good to be with you. I think my parting words are, apply to this quickly. I think, I'm in Washington, D.C., as most of you probably know. It's very unpredictable time right now. We have the inauguration next week. Hopefully we'll go off without a problem. But, you have a new president, you got a new administration, you're going to have a new SBA director, new Treasury secretary. The Senate's now being controlled by Democrats. So a lot could change. I think most of it will be positive. I think things will be better in terms of there may be more stimulus, another small business package. It could be a totally different program. But I think, honestly, to me, the opportunity is right now. You have this PPP program. We've been around it now for a while. Hopefully you all feel more comfortable. Hopefully you all have done the things, we've talked about for months in terms of establishing that relationship with your lender, the personal relationship, and an accountant and a lawyer and all those things. So your business is a lot more prepared to go for this money. So my advice is try and get it done this week if you can, and we'll see what happens in the weeks ahead, and we'll be there for you to inform you as to what that is.
Mark, thanks for having me, and I always love being on these panels and sharing time with you and Neil, and the wisdom that he brings is invaluable, I know, to all of us, so thank you. I would just say to take advantage of this incredible alignment that we have right now with Treasury, with bank regulators, with the banking system, with the Federal Reserve. I mean, everybody is out there trying to support stabilizing our small businesses, our most at-risk and affected businesses. I selfishly love that we have this moment in time to devote resources to minorities and underserved communities. And so I would also just echo that, get in front of your banker, connect with a CDFI, ask questions of LBAN. The resources are here, and we're all here to help, and we're all in this together, and we'll get through this together. And so if we don't have the answers, we will find out for you very quickly. So I wish everybody good luck, and I'm sure we'll be talking again.
Thank you, Eric and Neil. Thank you so much. I can't reinforce how much gratitude we have. And for those of you listening right now, I just have a couple of asks that you do something in progress today. If you qualify for the program, you might already have, because we've been communicating with some of you over the weekend. But what is that step or two or three that you're going to take right now to move this forward? Secondly, can you do us a favor? If you know a small business owner, whether it's a second draw or first draw that needs to hear this, would you mind sharing that? Would you create watch parties on your social media so that this message is spread? Do us that favor, because you know what? We can't control politics, but what we can control is helping each other out. That's the bottom line. These are challenging times. So you have the support of the Latino Business Action Network, the Stanford Latino Entrepreneurship Initiative, and I applied already, and this, that, and the other. Thank you so much, David. David, thank you. What a great setup. And we've got a special invite for you. We have our signature research event coming up. And what I mean by that is the powerful research coming from Stanford and the Stanford Latino Entrepreneurship Initiative through the Graduate School of Business at Stanford on Latino and Latina entrepreneurship across 50 states and Puerto Rico. We hope that you join us for that. You have all the RSVP information right here on our LBAN Facebook page. And we invite you to be here. David Favela, in fact, is going to be a panelist, and so is Eric Donnelly. And so please join us on Friday, January 29th for the State of Latino Entrepreneurship, hosted by Stanford Graduate School of Business and Latino Business Action Network, LBAN. That's Friday, January 29th from 1 to 3 Pacific time. Thank you so much. There's the registration link. Do us a favor. If you have not RSVP'd for this event, we want you to RSVP right now. Let's take 15 seconds. There's the link. Just a magical action of just clicking on that link. I don't want to spam out by using the word click, but do us a favor right now in these 15 seconds. Help us shape policy through the most comprehensive research on Latino and Latina entrepreneurs today. That is the bottom line. We need you at this event. We need you to share it. We need some policy activities to come from this research and this effort to move us forward and to persist with ganas through COVID-19, political, specifications, whatever they might be, and focus on you, where the focus should be on small businesses across the U.S. and Puerto Rico. Thank you, Latino and Latina business owners. Thank you, Neil. Thank you, Eric. Thank you, Jennifer and Elian, the LBAN team, Marianne, Angel, Carlos. Thank you, board of directors and the alumni of the Latino Scaling Program, the SLAY research team, Marlene and Inara, and of course, Professor Jerry Porras and Victor Arias. All of us together. We're working all together to move things forward. Have a great day, familia. We'll see you next time, and we'll keep you updated. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.